say the acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that we're meeting on the ancestral land of the Ngunnawal people. I recognise the Ngunnawal as the traditional custodians and pay respects to the elders of the community and their descendants. The prayer. And I'd ask you to remain standing after I complete the prayer, please. Let us be still and remember the presence of God. As we commence our meeting, let us together pray for guidance and help. And could you all repeat, all say together, Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the true welfare of Australia and the people of Australia. Amen. Now, we're all aware of the tragedy that's been visited upon the family of our director, Julie Rogers. I'd ask you all if you would join me in a minute's silence, just as a means of paying some respect to the family and some solidarity to the tragedy that they've experienced. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Do we have any apologies?
Councillor Butler.
I'd like to move the apology, Councillor Butler, Councillor Jones, Councillor Mike. Declaration of pecuniary interests or any special disclosures.
9.2, Bengo Wind Farms, the Minister of Bengo Wind Farms. I've got land next to them, I've got no wind towers, I'll probably get the beneficiary of money out in here.
Thank you, councillor. Any others? The minutes are circulated. Someone like to move the adoption of the minutes are circulated? Councillor Cameron, Councillor Reid. Any matters arising? Any questions? Any comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Very carried. Here a minute, there is none. For this meeting, maybe one subsequent meetings. We'll go straight on to reports. 6.1 is your evaluation of West Jasper Road. I think that's.
If I may, Mayor, if we could move 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 and 6.4 all through to confidential in one fell swoop.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We have a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Kim. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.5, development consent, subdivision 141B Rosslow Street, Yass.
I'm happy to move as per the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jones, Councillor Reid, any discussion?
Sure, just brief. Just like to thank the staff for their report. I think it's fairly clear that to go against the recommendation would be setting an unpalatable precedent for other subdivisions. And I'd just like to point out that this doesn't mean that council is by any way against sustainability and solar power, etc., etc. In fact, this actually allows you to put power back into the grid if you so choose. And we do have a policy that is for rural locations, which allows it, but for an urban area, there is an expectation on this council that in 10 or 20 years' time, we haven't created a problem for a future owner of a home. And I would never wish that on a homeowner to have to negotiate through steps that should have been done at the base level of planning.
Thank you, councillor Jones. Any further comments? Happy to vote? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.7. Development Contribution Plan 2018, review of operations.
Sorry.
Oh, jump. 6. Jump. Quick meeting's a good meeting. We got variations to development standards, quarterly report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to note that report.
We need a seconder, I think we do. Seconder, councillor Abbey. Any comments? Ready to vote? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. So we're on 6.7 now. West Valley Development Contributions Plan 2018, review of operation.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
We have a seconder. Seconded, councillor Reid. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against, declare it carried. Safety around schools debate, 6.8.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to move, and if I could, I'll get a second first.
Sorry, councillor Reid.
Look, I just wanted to point out that this is not a lapse in our design ability. This is a deliverable issue, and if the director would like to briefly speak to that on the basis of a small project, this is not out of the equation right now in this current economic climate of building and accessing services.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At this point in time, as I'm sure most people are aware, the construction industry is overheated, and price rises on every project that we're tendering at the moment have come through. So this is one of a number that you'll hear tonight, where we've done a design based on grants that we put in 12, 18, 24 months ago, and the price rises between then and now have been significant. The other challenge we have is with an overheated market, small projects of this type are very difficult to get contractors on site, and they are placing high margins on those jobs because they have so much in place. So this job in particular has been challenging even to get people to tender for. Not just the fact that we can't get someone to not just the fact that the prices are coming back high as well. And that's been a consistent trouble we've had, especially with earthworks projects, but the smaller ones in particular.
Any questions of the director? Everyone happy? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.9, change of location for the water treatment plant solar power installation.
I'd like to move the motion, please, Mr. Mayor, and commend the council staff for finding a solution to a motion of the previous council that said we put it on a building we were about to pull down. Congratulations.
We have a second.
Yes. I'm happy to speak briefly to this one. Notwithstanding that it's been about a decade of pushing for what seemed to be happening on every other regional and metro council, finally we're in the year where it's going to happen. So it's, I think, a sensible decision given what's afoot with the treatment plant. But to put it in context, this has been a work in progress for a very long time. As long as it gets done, I think there's a good smile on my face.
Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I think it's a great move, and I think the only thing I'm disappointed about is that it's not publicised well enough, and I think that we need to make sure that this particular project gets plenty of publicity as a move towards a more sustainable council. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Any further comments? That was moved by councillor Turner, seconded by councillor Perthen. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. 6.10, the water treatment plant upgrade project update. There is a recommendation. The report and work completed on the water treatment plant be noted. Someone like to move it? Councillor Reid. Seconded. Councillor Perthen. Any comments? Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we could just briefly get the director to explain what this particular update entails, because it is an exciting moment to finally have the week of construction pending some pipe. Is that about the sum of it?
Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Stage 1 Early Works program involves three separate components. The first being a bubble plume aerator within the dam. This is a reasonably challenging construction because we have to put a pipe at the base of the dam out from the wall. It's about 25 to 30 metres long with a whole bunch of holes drilled in it. That will force air up through the water column, which will give us a consistent intake of water from the dam into the raw water pump station. The second stage is an upgrade to the raw water pump station, which includes variable speed drives on the pumps and new bearings for the pumps as well. This will increase the life of the pumps with the new bearings, but also allow us to control the speed at which we put water through the water treatment plant. That will then allow us to have longer time to manage the treatment of water through the water treatment plant as it currently stands. The third part of the package is upgrades at the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant was built in the 90s. There are some parts of the treatment plant that don't comply with modern safety standards, especially to do with some of the chemical dosing. And so we're working to fix some of those issues. We won't be able to fix all of them because the plant itself isn't big enough to allow us to fix all of those issues, which is part of why we need the stage 2 upgrade, because we can't address all those issues. And so this has been broken down into three parts. The electrical and mechanical works across all three, because the same contractor is going to do those type of things. The civil and building works, which is generally a smaller contractor that doesn't have to have the large amount of technical skills that you need to do all the high-end electrical and mechanical work. And the final stage is the integration work. All of this revolves around control systems, so communications networks, electrical control systems, mechanical control systems that have to be integrated into the system, so the water treatment plant can talk to the pumps. We can control the aeration of the dam and the systems that do the monitoring of the aeration within the dam as we go through. So that's where we're at for stage 1. Stage 2 and 3, we're currently working through with the design consultant on the works that was identified as part of the peer review to get those works designed so that we can do the business case and provide that to Infrastructure New South Wales for their approval to keep going.
Mayor McGrath, through you to the Director Dugdale. Can I just ask when it is likely that Treasury will sign off on stage 1? Do we have that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we don't have a date. We expected that this week. As with most things of pushing through the public service, they can sometimes take a little bit longer than we expect. We've been told that it will happen. We're just waiting for the final sign-off of the paper. We've had approval to commit the money and spend it. We're just waiting for that final signature in order to get the final bit so we can start getting the money we've already spent back.
Further questions? Happy to vote? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.11, the investment and borrowings report. There is a recommendation. The report's been noted.
conditions.
Thank you, councillor Turner. Burgess. Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to give the Director an opportunity to speak to some of the tables. So it appears that the movement of the council investments was happening in January, and so is our position any better with the banks? There's usually the rule of thumb that banks always win. However, having experienced the trouble that we did with the large loans for the dam, being able to not renegotiate those when the rates were getting extreme, I just wanted to check. Are you happy with the fresh terms that have been set?
Through there, as in, am I happy with the terms of the investments?
Yeah, and
Still very low,
yes.
yes, and the negotiations of the loans are ongoing. So it could always be improved, but yeah, okay, it is what it is, unfortunately.
We don't know. There's no further questions, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Rate arrears, 612, there is a recommendation. Noted. Anything to highlight, Director?
Through you, Mr. Oh, sorry, let's get a secretary.
Oh, yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing untoward. It's at average at this point in time. It doesn't appear that we've been affected by the COVID pandemic at this point in time, but we are monitoring it.
No further questions? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Declare it carries. So, we're all a bit slow on the mic sometimes, councillor Reid. 613, second quarter budget review, there is a recommendation. Councillor Jones, councillor Reid, any questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to give the Director an opportunity to comment on the fact that we're heading towards a budget surplus of almost $500,000, and while that sounds exciting, the reality is a lot of that, I imagine, is because we can't get staff. Is that about the sum of it? Or are
Through
there more?
you, Mr. Mayor, actually no, that's not the case. It's capital projects, the grant projects that we actually undertook last financial year, but the funding didn't come through until this financial year.
Further questions, comments? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Six monthly progress reporting, delivery program, recommendation. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Pothan. Councillor Reid. Any discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to make sure that the General Manager's sharing the joy of speaking here, could I just check in with our General Manager? Is his ship? Just wanted to check that you're happy with the progress, or is there anything that you feel like we need to pull our straps up on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, look, I think the thing that is causing us some concerns at the moment is just being able to keep up with the works programs, whether it be extra grant money that we've received, or whether it is resources that we struggle to get because of those extra grants, but also because of problems with the weather we've been having in recent times, that they've delayed a number of programs. I think we had a feedback from the Barton Highway project. In the normal year, they reckon they lose 20 days, and they're already over 100 days of lost time on a project like that because of the weather conditions. So that's playing a lot of havoc with our civil construction programs and maintenance programs. So could it be better? I'd love a little bit of dry weather, a bit more dry weather at the moment, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Further questions? Not, I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6:15, draft community strategic plan.
There's an alternate motion, Mr Mayor, in regards to this, just to make some suggested amendments to a couple of the strategic objectives and the strategies. It's mainly around including objectives around the built environment and heritage.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you happy for me to put the alternate. The reason behind this is it came through very strongly for all of us really during the lead up to the election of the value that our community places on our heritage built infrastructure. And that is part of our environment. So the Memorial Hall and other privately owned buildings, particularly on the main street. And so what I've tried to capture here is the built environment into EN1 and EN3. So for EN1, we're including our natural and built environment. And also for EN3, we're including where we have a robust planning framework that considers our rural character and built landscapes. And that's for EN3. So a small change, but it's just to make it a bit more robust as to what we were getting back from the community during that time, and also in the surveys. I think during our communication of this plan, we're going to have to be very careful to let people know that their input on specific projects will not be lost. That'll help with our delivery plan. In the past, we've put out community strategic plans which have lots of speech bubbles of what people wanted. This is a different format. It's very much for us as councillors to consider, and I think we really have to communicate strongly when we go out to the community that that this is their opportunity to give us feedback. This is not a black and white document set in stone. This is their opportunity to have more say. We've got a great response. I mean, almost 1,000 responses to a CSP has never happened before. So that while it looks low for I think 4.7%, that's high in our historical documents of getting information back. But that was not the only opportunity. There's a new opportunity over the next month, and I know we've gone out lots of times to the community about particular things like our open space and parks and what they want to see in them. But I really want to reiterate that it's not a one-off opportunity to please have another say. So I really want to strongly recommend Council Executive to frame this because it's such a high-level document. When we ask the question as part of this CSP, what infrastructure do you think is missing in this town? And their specific answers aren't listed here. That could be a bit of a letdown for our community, that they're not seeing it in tangible examples in here. So I'm hoping that we communicate well that has been captured as part of the survey, and we'll be using that as part of our delivery plan. But this is just to really strengthen that emphasis on heritage and buildings that we want to preserve.
Councillor Reid.
I'll second the motion so that Councillor Jones can talk.
Yeah,
That's very generous.
I always do it. I always do it. Thank you, so cool.
So this is in addition to the recommendation, is that correct?
Yeah, it is the motion now rather than amendment.
Right. You right to go? Motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 6.16, leasing, licensing of council land and buildings policy. There's a recommendation.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's really just more administrative amendments to this policy, just to make sure that we're covering all the options in terms of leasing and licensing and the like.
Moved councillor Turner, do we have a second? Councillor Reid? Any discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know it sounds dry and I know it sounds administrative, but from my point of view, it's actually really, really exciting stuff. And I know that the director might be wondering why, but for me to understand that this is a step, an important step, having this policy refreshed, so that we are ready to do things like go into public partnerships on things like heated pools, and to actually bring about things that come out of the CSP and our community wants, but we have no budget for, to allow us to look outside the square and look at, well, who does have the money and who is willing to, come to our town and do a project for 20 years and be a part of it. So I actually see it as a very exciting and dynamic document from that point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Jones. Any further comments? Any further speakers? Not? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.17. Draft financial assistance grants and donations policies. You have a recommendation? I'd like to move it. Councillor Reid, Councillor Botham. Thank you. Any discussion? Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think because we're reducing this, I think it's important to put some context around the reasons why. So if we could get the director just to speak briefly, because the community might be thinking, why are you reducing that? So we owe it to them to have a discussion.
Thank you, councillor Jones. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, the number one reason that we're reducing this is that we do a lot of in-kind assistance for the community as well, which is not captured. And we basically, 185,000 is more than we can afford to be giving out as community grants, given the amount that we do in kind. I don't have that data here at the moment, given the systems that we have at the moment. It's difficult to capture that, but that's something that the staff are working on being able to capture moving forward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for some reason the starting sum of around 50k was coming to mind annually, that in terms of the hours of our staff. Was that something that was a starting point from memory, or was that just in a discussion that we had around the table?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, there was a sort of a quick estimate of how much was the in-kind support. It was about 50,000, but we want to dive a bit deeper, because there are other arrangements that have been historically been put in place that we haven't captured, and we're actually supposed to do that through our annual reporting. So yes, we do need to look at our systems in terms of all of the kind of support that we do provide to community organisations.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess it would be important to note that there may be organisations which are on the other side of that ledger for us and actually do in-kind for council on occasion, whether it be extra mowing or looking after grounds that are ours, but they're there in the village to make it happen, and that will actually help us assess who gets what grants too, if there's a lot of in-kind coming back to us as well. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.18, draft asset management policy. We have a recommendation. Policy be placed on public exhibition for 28 days.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Turner. We have a seconder. Councillor Reid. Any discussion? Thank you, councillor
Yeah,
Turner.
through you, Mr. Mayor. What's the significant submission?
Well, I guess through
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, the significant submission would be something that would ask for either a change of direction or a substantial addition to the policy. We do have submissions from time to time that are basically picking up grammatical or spelling errors. We wouldn't say they would be significant, they would be more administrative in nature, but yeah, generally speaking, a significant submission would be raising a new issue for addition into a policy, which would then be something that would then need to come back to council to get endorsement of that change.
Okay, so if it was something sort of really sort of querying something important, then it might come back here.
Correct, yes.
No further questions? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Excuse me. Council committees, 619.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, there is an alternate here based on some feedback following the briefing session the other night. The key changes are in the alternate motion is to bring the Memorial Hall Committee as an advisory committee. That would seem fairly simple to do because it's already got an established set of terms of reference that were circulated in the documentation. So that's been incorporated into the advisory committee section of this report. The other suggestion that was made was in relation to a sustainability committee. And the part 4 of the recommendation has been added here to seek a further report for the March Council meeting on some options for a sustainability committee, and together with reviewing the existing Council's environmental sustainability policy. So they're basically the two changes from what was presented to you in the business papers.
Any questions?
Well, we better put it. So you want to put the motion and I'll second?
For the, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr Mayor, yeah, I'll say, I'll move it, yeah. Sorry, I had a good speech lined up for you. I'm gonna go over the top, but anyway.
Councillor Cameron,
You can speak for it, sorry.
Cameron and Jones. Any discussion?
I'll just make a couple of comments. I was going to move an amendment to include the Memorial Hall into the advisory committees because I think, it's such a big issue, the Memorial Hall. It's such a significant building that it's coming up to the 100th anniversary, which has been noted by a number of people. The Heritage, the Yass and District Historical Society is preparing for a grant to write a history of it that will hopefully be ready by next year. So I think it's a significant building. It, as Councillor Turner likes, it was raised with community funds and community effort, and it was a memorial to those people, the sons and daughters who lost their lives in World War I, and it would have been a very sad occasion for doing that. And we know that the problems related to the Memorial Hall are significant. We know that we've attempted to get grants for it. They haven't been successful at this stage, and I'm sure that we're putting in for more grants to do some basic work. But hopefully somebody can win Tats Lotto and buy it for $1 or something and take it off the council's hands. I have my ticket. I do need it only for $1 though. Okay, thanks a lot.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's probably worthwhile just going through each of the committees and we've got a number of nominations that have come forward already. I think we've got a number in addition to a number of positions on the committee, so we might need to make some choices, and there's a few vacancies as well. So maybe we will just go down the list. So the two first ones, the GM's Performance Review Committee, all councils are involved in that. The Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, it's the Mayor and Councillor Abbey has already been appointed to that committee. So the next one down we have is the Economic Development Advisory Committee. We've got 2 councillor positions on that. Councillor Reid has come forward as one nomination. Is there anybody else that wishes to be part of the Economic Development Advisory Committee?
I'm happy to nominate, but I would like to defer to the Mayor if you would prefer to be on it. I'm happy to do it.
Through you, Mayor, and to you, Chris, as the GM, given that Kristen is not here, is there a mechanism for her to input and show her preferences?
She has shown a preference for a particular committee.
Right.
But she hasn't got back to us about any of the others. I mean, you could carry the vacancy, or you could, the other option, of course, is to reduce the number of councillor representatives down to one if that's what you want to do. So there's some options there.
The main thing is she's had input, that's all.
We're circulated
I'm
to
perfectly happy for you to sit on that.
The numbers.
The next one is the Aboriginal Consultative Committee. Councillor Turner and Councillor Reid have both nominated for this one. Presume there's no other nominations for it, so everyone's happy with that. The Youth Council, there's a position for one councillor on the Youth Council at this stage.
I'd be happy to nominate for that.
Thank you, Ms. Councillor.
Probably one of the closest to the age group.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to throw in
Good one,
rules
Mike.
on that one anyway.
Okay. The Memorial Hall, the terms of reference talked about two councillors being there. We've got three nominations. So Councillor Abbey, Councillor Turner and Councillor Potham.
Sorry, which one was that for?
Memorial Hall. Sorry, it's not the focus group. It should actually be. We'll just delete that focus group component. It's an advisory committee.
So can we expand the membership to include the three councillors rather than?
You could do if you wish. That's not a problem.
Would everyone be happy with that? And if you've got a degree of enthusiasm for people to go on the committee, as we have.
We can make that change to make it three councillors. The next committee down is, or a series of committees down, is the Community Enhancement Fund Advisory Committee. The terms of reference under the voluntary planning agreements here are for the mayor or a councillor delegate to be on the committee, and the general manager or the general manager's delegate to be on the committee.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not quite sure what the committee actually does.
Well,
I know that there's money, there's some fund money coming in that has to be distributed. Is that its only role?
Basically, it is. It's
And that's for all of one?
Basically, it's the same for all of them. The idea is that that when the wind farms, when the wind farms or the solar farms become operational, they start to contribute money into a community fund. The community fund is, the committee overseeing the community fund includes, as I say, the mayor or the mayor's delegate, the general manager or the general manager's delegate, usually a representative from the company that's operating the wind farm, and then there's a series of community representatives on there that don't have any financial interest in the wind farm. So that, in other words, if you've got a turbine on your property, you're already getting paid. It's not appropriate for you to be involved in, or that person to be involved in the distribution of the community funds. So we call for community reps. What they will do is, the whole idea of the committee is to identify what key priorities there might be for community funding, and then to call for applications. And then those applications will come back to the committee. The committee will evaluate them against the criteria, and then make recommendations to council about where that money should be awarded. So it's basically only a couple of meetings a year. It's to set the parameters, call for applications, and then to evaluate the applications and make a recommendation to council. At this stage, the wind farms and the solar farms are not operational, so it's only when they become operational that the committee will set up. But what we're trying to do is the administrative side of it at the moment, get them set up so that they're ready to go when they become operational. And there's a couple that are very close to that. So yeah.
And where are the meetings held? Are they?
Oh, they'll be held in the chamber here. It's a council committee, it'll be run in the chamber here.
All right.
There is some other committees, external committees, where it's the Community Consultative Committee, which is a different committee. It's not administering the money, it's overseeing the operation of the and construction of the wind farms.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just as a point of order, could I suggest that we go into a committee of the whole, because we have reached our limit as per a resolution. So if everyone's in favour, to go into a committee of the whole. Thank you.
Which we can all, I think. So it's moved councillor
You
Jones,
don't have to.
second.
Thought you'd like that.
Seconded. Councillor Burgess. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Move the
Just
committee.
kept that, so we'll just flip back up to our list.
Just a quick question regarding those particular committees. Is the councillor the chair of those meetings?
Correct.
Okay, so like the Zoom option's not really in your favour then?
So
Chair a meeting.
they're all set up under a voluntary planning agreement, and the agreement spells out how the committees are to operate. It provides for the mayor and the general manager to be council representatives on the committee, but in turn it also allows the mayor and the general manager to nominate another delegate for the committee. So in my case, it might be one of the other directors, and in the mayor's case, it might be one of the other councillors if the mayor's not interested in being on those committees. But that's so if you're happy with the mayor and the general manager as the representatives on the council, we can move through them quickly, or if you want to do something a little bit different, then that's up to your discussion.
We're happy as long as I'll That's a big chunk, and I it's only going to grow. This is bigger than the workload last time for this kind of committee. I just note that Councillor Frost, and I'm trying to remember who else was on the wind turbine committees. Was it you? Who was on the?
The councillors were on the consultative committee, which is a separate committee.
Ah, okay.
So these committees have never been set up before,
Okay, so this is new.
because they've been in the construction phase. Now they're coming to the end of the construction phase. We're just trying to get the administration sorted out, so when they do become operational, money starts to flow. Okay, so there's three there. There's the Copperbella, Ride Park, and I think the Bango Wind Farm. If everyone's happy with the mayor and the GM, although so the Bango one, Councillor Abbey is also nominated there in that particular one. So
I'm happy to see Jim do that.
I grew up in the county of King and parish of Bengo, that's where our property was. I know how to pronounce Bengo.
So what's the wish? I'm happy.
So we could say that in that particular instance, Councillor Abbey is the delegate.
Also with the Memorial Hall one, if we can up the meetings to 4 at least, because we were just sitting on one as a focus group, so I don't know what it said for that one. I'm sure it's
Yeah, just make it consistent with the other ones.
Yeah,
So
that
put it
would
in
be
4. Okay, the Springdale Solar Farm is the final one of that group of community enhancement funds. The Springdale Solar Farm is actually is near the Sutton Village, and it is a slightly different community enhancement fund. It's actually, whereas all the wind farm ones run while ever the wind farms continue to operate, unfortunately the Springdale Solar Farm is only operating the fund only operates for 29 years. Which is much to our disgust, I can assure you.
Some of us,
So it only runs for the 29 years, which is the estimated life of the solar panels.
one couldn't imagine them repairing them or putting a fresh one on.
No, that's exactly right. Don't worry, I've had this argument with the bureaucrats and at the Department of Planning, and they need to get out of Sydney a little bit more. Sorry.
And that's
Frustrating.
the closest Chris will ever come for us to have to remind him about the very first statement that the man made at the beginning of the meeting. Always the gentleman.
The next group that we've got there is the focus groups. So we've got the public arts focus group, and Councillor Potham has volunteered to be one of the councillors there. Unless there's anybody else interested, or in fact, if you wish to nominate a staff member to be on the committee, you're quite welcome to do that as well.
Gotta pick the engineer.
We'll be asking.
I'm not sure there's too many art critics in the executive side.
Look, if no one else would like a crack at it, and I'm more than willing to step back if a new councillor would like to step in, I'm happy to keep going on it. I'll be deferring a lot to Kayla's superior knowledge. My 3-unit art and just general opinionatedness has been carrying me for a while, so it'll be great to have her on board. But if someone would like it, please just say so, because I'm more than willing to step back.
Okay, I think you've just talked yourself into it.
Everyone else can.
The next one is the Murray Bateman Red Grounds Focus Group. Councillor Reid, I know Councillor Butler didn't nominate for this one. She was much more keen on the actual project. But again, I think perhaps Councillor Butler would be useful on this committee, being another representative from the Murray Bateman area. So
I would suspect it would be
Just put
a
you on.
logical choice.
Yes.
Unless Councillor Burgess would like to take it up.
If for some reason she doesn't, if she says she doesn't want to do it, I'm happy to jump in there, because I lived in Murray Bateman for 8 years, so I'm local, not really, but put her in there first, but if she just says no.
yeah, that's okay. I'm going to do that. The Sports Council, a councillor nomination for this one. We didn't receive anybody. This one.
Given my close encounter of the Sports Council, I'd be happy to sit in on it.
Okay.
Well done.
Councillor Turner. The Open Space Project Committee, we've got 2 nominations there, Councillor Butler, Councillor Turner. This is a short-term working party steering committee, so it's not expected to have not expected to go beyond the life of the project. So once council's finalise the project, that committee would be wound up. So we have the 2 nominations there. For the next one, for the Main Street project, we've got 3 nominations there. Councillor Abbey, Councillor Turner, and
It's
Councillor.
unnecessary.
Yeah, that's right.
Go do.
Abby, Turner,
Kayla.
oh yeah, good.
So I look at, again, maybe you'd like to, I know the council's already resolved that there would be 2 councillor representatives on the committee, but you just made a decision, well, not a decision quite yet, but you did suggest adding enthusiastic councillors to the committee. So if you wanted to make that 3 councillors, I'm sure that will just override the decision that you've made at previous meetings.
Everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
I think it's the best way forward.
It'll work in your favour. There will be some clashes and commitments. It'll all work out.
We should have learned.
Okay, the next group of committees are all external committees. These are actually not run by us, but we are invited to participate in there. So the first one is the Canberra Region Joint Organisation, and that under the terms of reference of that committee, it's the Mayor. Or if the Mayor's unavailable, it would default to the Deputy Mayor. The next one is the regional planning panels. This is, as Julie pointed out a while back, is really a skills-based and experience-based nominees for this. In the past, it was a couple of councillors. That worked okay when councillors weren't the proponents. What we do have coming up in the near future is council is the proponent for the civic precinct DA. And as most councillors around the table are probably going to be involved in the decision making on that project as the proponent of the application, you would probably need to have somebody outside of councillors. So that could be, if you're looking for somebody with skills, it might be a director of planning at a nearby council who could be brought in for that particular project. Or a community member who's either from inside or from outside the local government area. So,
Question. We looked at a particular candidate for the open space strategy, Main Street, Peter Harvey, which we've, no, not Peter Harvey, Harvey Long, sorry, who we picked up for that one, and he mentioned that he was town planning. Like, how, have we looked at his, have we done a deep dive onto him, how relevant those skills
yeah, he actually, I'm pretty sure from memory, he actually made a submission on the civic precinct project. So,
Not in terms of the panel.
yeah, he hasn't made it. We would, if we were looking at someone like that, we would need to make an approach to them to see if they were interested in being on that.
So we could push it back onto you to find an appropriate. I'd like them to be from Yass Valley, because quite frankly, I see Goulburn as competition sometimes for particular things. So I would.
Well, the thing is though, when you sit on these panels, you're not sitting on representing your community. You're actually sitting on there to judge the planning merits or otherwise of the project. So the type of people that the Department of Planning recommend are people with skills anywhere from being a lawyer, an environmental scientist, a traffic engineer, a town planner, an architect. So they recommend people with those type of skill backgrounds from them. But as I said, the practice at this council has been to nominate a couple of councillors in the past. Maybe a short answer might be a councillor is on the panel for all those things where they don't have a pecuniary interest, and then maybe we source alternates when councillors do have an interest in a project, and maybe a community type person with appropriate skills, we just source them. So that's my suggestion. So if you wanted to nominate a councillor as one of those reps, that might be a good idea, with the view that we source an alternative if there is a conflict of interest. We could look at sourcing an appropriately qualified person to be on the joint planning. Sorry.
And just to give councillors a fair warning, this panel meets all kinds of places.
No, generally the meetings have been they've been two. Obviously through COVID, it's been but remotely, so a Zoom or a Teams meeting, and the other times they've tended to meet down here. So that the government appointed panel members tend to come to the local government area where the proposal is based. The reason they do that is because they often do that coupled with a site inspection as well as their meeting. So, yeah, so the three externals would appointed by the government would generally come to the area so that they can conduct a site inspection.
I think given that Jim's committee lasts only 6 months and then it's defunct, I'm going to swing him into the crosshairs there. Would you like to nominate for that one?
Yeah.
You make a lot of, you ask a lot of questions, so that's.
There is a test as well on this one. There is a quiz that you have to do. I've had to do it for where I was press ganged into sitting on another council's regional planning panel because they had a conflict. So it's not that hard.
Certainly. So not a hospital pass after all.
Is it harder than click the squares that have yellow traffic lights in it that proves you're not a robot before you start? I won't tell you how many times I've had to restart that.
Okay, looks like you, councillor Abbey.
The next one, the Local Emergency Management Committee, it's this has been council staff, usually the director and the Local Emergency Management Officer is part of that as well. Similarly with the Local Rescue Committee and the Regional Emergency Management Committee, these are committees made up largely of representatives from the community services. They're quite operational in their focus. The Local Traffic Committee, this can be a councillor or an officer. In the past, it's been a councillor. But as I say, the terms of reference for the local traffic committees is it could be an officer if that's what you wanted to do. So, and Councillor Jones has been the chair in recent times.
5 years of drought followed by 1 month of win, thanks to our beautiful staff in engineering who have secured grants. Thank you. So it was a long time in the wilderness trying to fix the issues up at Yass Public School and around the other schools particularly, and we just collected, which was great. I want to throw Mike in there because the truth is that it is the place where a lot of traffic issues are coming up and will continue to come up. And Myron Bateman is, well, I'm there for a variety of reasons every week, doing drop-offs and pickups for guitar lessons and scouts and what have you. Mike is living and breathing the issues out there, so I want to throw to you.
Oh, thank you.
How very generous.
You sure it's only 4 meetings a year?
It's biannually, unless there's something that, and Terry will look after you if there's something that happens between, like home and away, want to do a cliff drop off on Wee Jasper Road and you get hammered, he would say, oh well, that just happened between meetings. Sorry, I'm not really selling this, am I?
You're happy to be shoehorned into it?
Well,
Councillor
probably
Red?
not, but if there's, through general manager, to the general manager, I say. Chris, when you put down an officer, what was your thinking about that? Why do you think?
Well, again, there's pros and cons. I mean, the officers, if we were looking at appointing an officer to it, you'd be looking at obviously someone from James's area, or James himself. And basically it's the chair role, but they do bring, the local government engineering knowledge to that role and contribute to the committee in that way. I think the councillors have tended to be involved as the chair in the past, one because of their chairing abilities. Council and often seen as the sort of honest broker in terms of that role. So that's perhaps a reason why a councillor has been on the committee before, not necessarily for their technical knowledge, but obviously more for their community connections and their chairing abilities. So they're the broad choices.
It's been essential, the tension between RMS and our engineering staff when there's a difference of opinion. There's something to be said for a councillor to say, well, what are you going to bring to the table, RMS, because this is your road.
May I ask if ADN's got any interest in that line?
Sorry?
Have you got any interest in that local traffic line?
Very interesting question. You've just noted that I haven't been on many committees so far.
Well, that's there is a certain lack of
Energy.
no, not energy, motivation.
Look, if Mike doesn't want to do it, that'd be quite okay. I think I said the wrong thing.
Thank you, councillor Cameron.
You're gonna enjoy it.
What have I nominated? I think I do know what I'm nominating.
You're gonna enjoy it.
But the school issue at Murray Bateman is obviously fairly important.
There's going to be a number of issues, and from an engineering perspective, I would really prefer to have a counsellor there. Like, I'm happy to do the job, but I'd prefer to have a counsellor.
I'll take the blame.
Well, because so that we've got, because I deal with Transport for New South Wales regularly. I work within the public service, having a counsellor to have an outside perspective to that, but also because, as you point out, we have a couple of issues that are going to come up. So we have Hamilton Rise and the change in the 50 zone. That's a reasonable issue that's going to come up and where that should be. We've got Murray Bateman School, that's going to be an issue, and then we have things like Hercules Street, Rose Street intersection, and those type of things within Murray Bateman as well. That will come up, that having the independence of a counsellor as opposed to the engineering staff there will provide a big benefit to council as a whole, not just to the community.
I would do that independent. I've got my mind made up about all this.
Through Mr Mayor as well, I think what it also does is maximise the technical expertise for staff, and they're not conflicted by being a member of the committee, so they can actually give you objective advice and support on issues that come forward.
And I look forward to being one of the councillors. Look forward to Adrian. Can you look into this issue? It's gonna come.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I owe you one.
I really asked the question.
The Junon Dairy Conservation Trust, Councillor Jones was appointed last year to that, and it's basically a role that's almost, is a director's role to the organisation. So if Councillor Jones didn't proceed with that, whoever took that mantle up would need to actually do some training on being a company director. So I'm presuming Councillor Jones is still keen to continue with that at the present time?
Yes, and I'm on the subcommittee for public funds and have to help come up with an investment strategy. So I'm still learning, trust me. There's lots I'm still learning.
The ACT and Region Catchment Management Coordination Group, this is actually a committee that's set up under the ACT legislation. It's run by the ACT government, and the provisions in the terms of reference there are that the general manager is the council's nominee on that, and the alternate is the director of planning. The positions are also have to be. The nominations that council make have to be signed off by ACT government and Parliament. So that's the way the terms of reference are structured. So it's an officer-led committee for the local government representation. So that I'm suggesting that remain the status quo at this stage. The Southeast Australian Transport Strategy Inc. is a group that again, it's usually the directors or the traffic engineers that are from local government are on that committee. I think that's still operating at this stage.
Still operating, as we've still met 3 times last year. We missed one. There are a number of councillors from some of the larger councillors on the committee. I think the chair is a councillor at the moment. But it's a combination of both. So some councillors have a councillor and the director of engineering on there. Others have just the director of engineering. If you would like to be involved, you're welcome. But I'm happy to keep doing that. It's a good networking. Good networking gets me to talk to all the people from Transport for New South Wales, but get a bit of backing for trying to stop them putting B triples down the Hume Highway, which is the
just on that one, I think there's generally 4 meetings a year, or up to 4 meetings a year, and 2 are usually in Victoria and 2 are in New South Wales. Because this is a cross-border group that takes representation from the outskirts of Melbourne all the way through to the outskirts of Sydney.
So not home for school pickup.
Correct.
I've been to one away meeting at Goulburn. I did get a tour of the brewery though.
Southern Tablelands Regional Arts, we had a meeting the other day, and the way they want to structure that now is to have a councillor and a senior staff member on that. Councillor Potham has come forward to be the rep on there, and Lynette has agreed to be the officer representative on the arts committee, not necessarily for her artistic expertise, but more about her corporate knowledge and governance arrangements.
She's just, oh, she's not there.
And her community passion.
She'll have to watch the
video.
Now these are the next one group are the community consultative committee associated with these major renewable projects. In the past, it's been a councillor representative on each of these. Councillor Turner has come forward to nominate for Copperbella Wind Farm, and Councillor Abbey has nominated Bango on the community, so there's a good link there between the community consultative committee and the funding committee. So we just need a councillor rep for Ryde Park and the Hume Link Community Consultative Group. The Hume Link is basically the transmission lines.
What does it mean to be reviewed in 2022?
They haven't, they've asked for a councillor nominee at this stage, but I don't think they've had their terms of reference signed off by the government at this stage, so that's coming up for review. So that might be one of the first tasks of that group.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've just realised that with Rye Park and Hume Link, I actually have a pecuniary interest, and it's just dawned on me on that one, because they are becoming regular advertisers in the local newspaper which I own. So I'm actually going to step out while you're dealing with this set of committees.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Excused.
Probably should be noted that I declared an interest in Hume Link previously. You'd be delighted to hear that it's not going over the top of me at all, and I no longer have a pecuniary interest. So I shall stay put. The minutes will show that I've declared an interest in the past.
Okay.
Which is quite acceptable if your circumstances change. That's good. So we do just need a couple of nominations when we get the interests sorted.
Where are we situated with Hume Link at the moment? My impression is that it hasn't gone over well with a lot of people.
They're basically in the preliminary parts of the process. What happens with these major projects is that you get the Secretary of the Department of Planning to specify the requirements for their planning documentation. So all the consultant studies and research that they need to do to supplement their initial scope of works. And that forms the basis of the documentations for assessment under the planning legislation. So at this stage, and usually as part of that process, there is an opportunity for the community to have their say on the scope of that planning documentation. So that's where we're basically up to on Hume Link at this stage.
I'll put down for the Hume Link.
Okay.
I'd like to find out more about it.
So Hume Link there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask you, Chris, with Ryde Park, how far advanced is it compared to the Bango wind farm?
It's.
And how often do they meet these groups?
It varies, but generally it's only usually about 4 meetings a year from memory.
Oh, right, so it is 4 times a year.
Well, it can vary, because I think in COVID they had to make alternate arrangements, and I think in a couple of them cases they actually cancelled the meeting because of the restrictions. And in some of these cases, I think some of the members don't have ready access to remote, Teams or Zoom.
Do you understand that Bango is more advanced as a wind farm than Ride Park, is that correct?
Yeah, Ride Park is it's not as advanced as Bango.
Mr General Manager, I can tell you about Rye Park.
Okay.
Rye Park, they're just building the roads.
Yeah.
They're getting the roads already and they're resealing all the major roads and ripping them all up. That's out of the other side of Rye Park. They've got all the roads ripped up and they're up
Is that on the
doing
road to rugby or
pads.
something, is it?
Aye.
Is that on the road to rugby?
They're doing the pads up on one hill on one side, but nothing on the other side. They're just doing it. They're doing all the roads up through Bora where they're gonna come with the trucks. They'll reseal them all, dig them all up, reseal them all.
Which is a requirement of the actual
That's right.
planning approval. And certainly we've been instrumental in pushing for the road works to be done before to make sure the roads are fit for purpose in terms of delivering of the construction period. And then there's another part of it which is for them to be maintained over the life of the construction program. So in that case, they're starting in the Hilltops area, Hilltops Upper Lachlan area. But we're because it's in 3 local government areas, each council gets a representative, gets a voice at the table.
And who would tend to chair that one, so
There's an independent chair, so the government
it's like
appoints.
the Bango one then, is it?
Yeah, so the governments appoint an independent chair. So I think there was a Lisa Andrews.
Bango was Tom McGrath.
No, I thought it was. Oh right, okay. There was Nick Carmody's one of them.
Okay.
He's got 2, but one I don't think is proceeding. So we're not suggesting we nominate a councillor for the one that hasn't moved in about the last 10 years.
Well, I would I'd be quite happy to do Rye Park because my background is in that part of the Shire, and the other thing is I know a lot of people in Bora as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So unless someone else wants to do it, I have a bit of a natural link.
Yeah.
I used to be on the Rye Park Road, so it's now called Cooksill Road, but hey, I know the area.
I think I think that's probably not a bad idea because I think you'll find probably some of the issues are quite common between each
Yeah,
group.
they'll be cross organisation. I know it is as well.
All right. I'm not sure how we're going to do this now because we've got Councillor Jones who's got a conflict of interest in 3 of these, so we might have to move those. You might have to move those first, so that matter's dealt with, and then bring it back in for the balance. So, can I suggest that your first motion is that you make the appointments in relation to those Wind Farm and HumeLink and Community Consultative Committees, move that as a motion for those councillors to be appointed there.
We can move with Councillor Popham. Second. Burgess. Any discussion? If not, I think we've had plenty. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried.
Yeah, I think we can now bring Councillor Jones back in to vote on all the other ones as well. So sorry.
I move, Mr Mayor, that we move on to the committee of the whole and resume the normal meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Popham. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare it carried. So we're back in open session.
So, Councillor Jones, the ones where you declared an interest, that's been decided. We now go back to the balance.
Excellent, thank you.
Because you don't have a conflict in those ones.
Excellent, yes, I was thinking outside the square, how do I retrospectively ask you to divide this? So,
Yeah, so we've just done that.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. We're back to the recommendation.
So the recommendation has the 4 parts to it. And the only parts that are not in that recommendation are the consultative committees for those major projects.
Everyone happy? Yep. Someone like to move the motion?
I would have Cameron second.
Okay, I'll put the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Clear carried. 7-1.
This was a motion from Councillor Cameron.
Want to move your motion, Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I need a second.
Yes, okay, you've
Thank you.
moved it, seconded Councillor Potham. You've got a second?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Mayor, for giving me an opportunity to speak on this important motion. And I take note of the General Manager's comments in regard to the motion. I think we sort of want to come back to what was mentioned previously by Councillor Jones, that we did go through a process of a recent council election. And I think a number of candidates, and some of those people were successful and are around this table at the moment, who talked about the need to secure more grant revenue for the benefit of Yass community. And it's good that some of the people who were pushing for that are here today. As a member of a group of people, the Green Team, we did a brief analysis using Grant Connect website on the Yass Valley performance relative to surrounding councils. And it suggested perhaps we could do better in terms of going for grants. And therefore, we suggested that as we were campaigning, that we thought that a full-time grants officer was the way to go. Now, I understand that that at that time, that a grants officer position was being counted by the council, and however, it was what in our thinking was a little bit limited in that it was 2 days a week with the possibility of a third day. And I was thinking that perhaps we needed something more substantial. Now, obviously, the budget dynamics of last year would have played a part in what could be done in regard to that. So we suggested a full-time grants officer, and I think a number of other candidates also came in on that argument as well. Now, I believe, and I'm not absolutely 100%, but I believe that Upper Lachlan, which is a smaller LGA than us, has a full-time grant officer at the moment. Now, that may be shared with other councils. I'm not fully aware of that. But I do know that recently, or soon to be, they're advertising for an assistant for that person as well. So they're really getting into the grants game in a big way. We've got elections coming up. We've got a federal election, I believe, in May, which will be very interesting, and a state election in the following year. Now, I'm not into pork barrelling, but one of the things we notice with elections is we do sometimes get commitments, and sometimes these commitments can be substantial. Sometimes they can even be kept as well, but sometimes they're not as well. So anyway, but I think we're at a time when we really need to do something substantial about the grants officer position. And I think we need to have a bit of a comprehensive analysis by our executive to basically inform our thinking as a whole, that I think we need to sort of go back and see what was sort of happening. We need to know where you are and how you are performing before you can advance successfully. And I think that's what this motion is trying to do, to get more information about how we have been going. And I think some of the things we can say, you know, about grants, sometimes you do find out that you were unsuccessful. And usually there's feedback. You get feedback about why that grant didn't succeed. And I know in a recent unsuccessful grant, that feedback did occur, and perhaps we were on the wrong tangent in regard to what we were trying to achieve. Maybe we were also trying to achieve more than what they were going to be prepared to give. So I think we need to get financial information on the grant stuff because I think we want to be able to say to our ratepayers that we are, as a council and as councillors, that we are fiscally responsible, that we are not asking ratepayers for more money, whether we can or not. We can do it through charges, etc., or reducing services. And we're now going through the budget discussions for 22-23. Now, I realise we do have a difficult situation. We were elected at the end of December and not at the start of September. And I think that's 4 months gone where we would have had a lot more information, I would have believed, being presented to us. It wouldn't have been in a rush and it wouldn't be so demanding on the council staff in regard to what they have to provide for us. So everyone's under pressure, but I would have thought that in a digital age that we would have been able to get a lot of this information fairly readily, whether it was a public reporting process or auditing or whatever, that we would have had a lot of this information. This motion isn't about blame. We're not trying to say we should have done this or we should have done that. But what we do need to do is to figure out what information we do have and how that can sort of make us much more positive and proactive in the future to get a better result for Yass Valley Council. So I think councillors want to become more informed about the budget stuff, and I think we are in a rush at the moment, not through anyone's fault, and I'm just not sure that councillors who stood for council, who made election promises, or we would try and do X, Y, Z, we are going to be finding that very difficult in the current budget situation with a lack of information to basically to fulfil those promises in the first year or so. So I think the grants officer is an important post, and I know that we're struggling at the moment to get someone into that particular position. I believe, and I think a number of people would believe, that a full-time position would probably be more successful than a part-time position. A lot of people who work part-time soon find out that they get part-time pay for a full-time, well, not a full-time, but a much more demanding position. So 2 days might work out to be 3 or 4 days in actual work. Recently, or last year, I went to a workshop that was run by council, by the grant guru, and it was a 4-hour session. And I actually have told a lot of people that it was an excellent presentation. One thing that he said was that grants are too important to be a haphazard exercise. And I think that's why I think we need more information about grants in the past so that we can do better in the future. And we do need to know how we are going in comparison to other councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any speakers against the motion?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not against the motion per se, but I think that given the General Manager's comments and the fact that to try and get all this information over these number of years out of a database which is probably suspect at least, probably not even there at most, would be counterproductive. I think the benchmarks that Councillor Cameron has put forward are great for going forward, and I think maybe we should be looking at if there is certain information that is readily available that will give us some kind of indication as to how successful we've been or not. Let's grab that. but let's use this as a basis of moving forward from here. I'm just wondering if Councillor Cameron's willing to modify the motion to that effect, so.
Do you want to say?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would just like to add, just from the discussion we had the other day, through the General Manager as well, that when the council goes for grants, there's also a big commitment on the council's behalf with the grant monies that come along. So that obviously puts a lot of pressure on our funding buckets. Whereas if we can be supporting community groups to go for these grants, obviously I agree with your motion, there's a lot of grants out there and a lot of funding available for lots of stuff in the community. But for us, if we could support community groups to go for these grants, it actually puts a lot less pressure on council funds and actually gives the community groups a bit of onus and pride over going through with these grants and making stuff happen. So I'm not sure if the grants officer, part of their position was to help the community groups with their grants as well. But I see that obviously as a thing that puts less pressure on the council budgets and is an opportunity, because most of the community-based grants come through and they're 100%, where the ones that come through council can be 50%, 40%. And so then it's up to us to fund the extra. So I think there's a lot more we can do to support community groups to go for these grants, and then they've got 100% of the funds, which I think is a good way forward as well. So I just wanted to add that. I do agree with the motion. I wasn't talking against it, but I just wanted to add.
Through you, Mr Mayor, through you, Mr Mayor, just to make a comment on that. I think there was a comment at the briefing session that the grants officer position would be involving with community groups and assisting them and helping them, which I said at the time I thought was fabulous. I thought that was a great way to go, and you're right that it's financially much better for us if community groups can be helped and assisted in any way to get the grants and get the full amount of those grants. And there's obviously some examples recently where that's happened to the benefit of the particular community and also for council taking that particular financial drag away from council and getting the grant to do that particular activity. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. Councillor Burgess.
I just think it's asking the staff to go back and find where all these grants and all this money come from for years. I think it's wasting staff's time. I'm not really against the motion, but I'm against that.
I'll ask the director to comment.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that we have about 6 staff members currently who apply and write for grants on an ongoing basis, and they are very productive. The grants officer is going to supplement those. It's not going to remove that responsibility from staff. So yes, Upper Lachlan may have a full-time grants officer and may be looking for assistant. We're looking for an assistant to help the 6 staff that we already have that write grants. So it's not as though we don't have people writing grants. Staff write grants all the time. We don't have a fantastic electronic system, and since I've commenced, I have mentioned that several times, and we are looking to improve that process. However, we are pulling together information, and one of the things that we will be doing is that we will be providing council with a quarterly report moving forward on what grants have been applied for, what is successful, what has been successful and what hasn't. We don't always use Grant Guru, so the data that you have researched is not accurate. A lot of the grants come from other sources, and Grant Guru is only a new system that we haven't actually pushed with the people that are writing grants at this point in time. It is a good opportunity to look and see what's there, but we get notifications from all sorts of areas. So I think that saying that we're behind the ball game with only applying a part-time grants officer is not recognising that work is being done, and that yes, we are looking to improve our systems, and moving forward we will be able to do that. But as the General Manager's comments have said, if I put a staff member towards doing this, it would take them away from their day-to-day work, and we don't have the level of staff to be able to go backwards. Myself and the executive management team and the staff are looking at moving forwards and improving processes moving forward. And that's all I have to say.
At the risk of being a total pedant, Councillor Cameron has closed the debate.
No, he was through you, a point of responding to.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can make a suggestion. The difficulty for the staff at the moment is to reflect back on is that we're going to either take staff resources away from actually preparing your current budget, or we could actually look at bringing somebody in to actually do this work. I actually don't think it's a great deal of value in looking at what's happened in the past. The report from the parliamentary inquiry was released today. That indicated that governments have been using grants for pork barrelling across a number of electorates in the state. And I think they need to get their house in order and fix that up to assist us. We may have been being at the fringes of an electorate area, missed out on some of those grants because the efforts were in other areas. Look, I'm very supportive of the idea of a grants officer. We're trying to work within our existing budget. That's why it's been packaged up as a part-time role. But look, if you want to do some of this work, help community groups, assist staff in doing it, I think bite the bullet and make it a full-time position. So these sort of things could be part of the brief for the person, a successful person who is successful with the job. We won't necessarily get this information to you to inform your current budget, but it'll certainly help with informing the future budget. So my suggestion would be if you wanted to do this is use this information as sort of the terms of reference for somebody who's successful in becoming the grants officer, bite the bullet, make it a full-time position. Or it could be like Golden Warrior Council did a few years ago, is have a job share position. So two people, one work 2 days a week and the other work 3 days a week. So that's the other option, but we can deal with that as part of the process in terms of the recruitment of whoever's the grants officer. So that would be my suggestion to you.
Maybe when we've dealt with this motion, depending on which way it goes, we can have a report on something along those lines subsequently.
Perhaps, Mr. Mayor, maybe you should wait until you have the budget workshop and decide whether you want a full-time or part-time position then.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak to that motion? I'm a little disinclined for us to be sort of conducting a retrospective witch hunt and spending money on the grant processes in the way that they perhaps haven't gone so well in the past. I would concur with the train of thought of the GM that we can use as a bit of a template and maybe tag things as we go forward, but look to go forward and be able to look back in 6 months or 3 months and be able to answer those sort of questions. But reflecting just on the past and taking staff resources off that to do that, I think we can be more productive and money's better spent by looking forward and using, as you say, this is a bit of a template.
So you're speaking against the motion, Councillor Abbey.
Possible point of order there. I may have been distracted at the time, but did we move out of a committee?
Yes,
I wasn't distracted. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, firstly I'd like to speak against the motion and then foreshadow the motion. Firstly, I wanted to thank Councillor Adrian Coleman for bringing his thoughts to the table. I think he's presented a very healthy interest in understanding why we don't get the grants that we think that we should. So after 10 years on council and watching a very small rural executive team consistently punch above their weight, it's really disappointing when the community does get a hold of the moments where we do trip up, but we do. And that's usually because we don't have the strategic documents behind us to pave the way for a successful grant. For an example of that would be the Main Street grant that we went for. We went for a small item, we went for upgraded power so we could do exciting things in terms of PA systems and lights in the Main Street and post, projections of lights on the buildings. It was a wonderful vision, but we needed the infrastructure for that and we missed out because we didn't have a strategic document. And that became glaringly obvious to the community. So when I see an item like this, I say, great, it's great that you're asking the right questions, but for $60,000, that's the other side of that part-time grants position for a year. And I'd rather spend it going forward. And I've heard what the executive have to say, that they believe that and understand that they will have the kind of reporting framework going forward. I'm really excited to hear that commitment from our Director of Community and Corporate Services. To put it in perspective of how badly our digital system is, we don't know what our DA processing time is right now. We don't know. We know that we've got DAs sitting in the system that have been there for 6 months. We've got builders pulling out their hair going, this was a basic mum and dad DA. Why can't we do it? And we can't do it because we're in the same boat as every other council in this region. We can't get our hands on building surveyors. We're pulling in locums, like Yass Hospital is pulling in doctors, and it's costing us. And it's costing us big money. And what we need to do is get a report back from our executive on how best to spend that money at budget time. Is it a part-time position on grants and feed other money into strategic document construction, or getting across another building surveyor, or upping the price that we're willing to pay for one to get that money flowing and to get our business flowing. Grants, it's the Xbox for us. We know what our set budget is. It's rates, it's FAGS grants. We know those regulars, but what we don't know is that blue sky swinging hit. There's been small councils that got $1 million for their main street and blew us out of the water in terms of our application for Main Street. And they did it because they had the plans and the strategic documents in the bottom drawer ready. And that's where our strength will be if we can support our executive and also support our community. And a full-time grants officer, I believe, is the way to go, but I want to make sure that our executive think the same thing. And so I'd like to foreshadow afterwards this motion that council requests a report prior to budget on the implications of a full-time grants officer position. And I'm hoping that after this vote that Adrian will
Okay. Do you want to exercise your right of reply?
I will indeed. Thanks for the discussion. I think I would like to thank the Director for outlining the role of the part-time, if it is a part-time person, because I wasn't aware that this person would be assisting the 6 people who are writing grants at the moment. So that's an interesting piece of information of how that person could be used. And I'm also very pleased that it was mentioned previously about being involved with community groups as well. I'm also pleased that going forward that we are going to get consistent reports, perhaps using some of that as a basis of how we are going in terms of grant. If Mike's suggestion earlier about if there's any information that's readily available for the budget discussion next week, I think it is, that would be much appreciated as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I'll put the vote then. All those in favour?
What's your motion, sorry, we talked about?
So the
Cameron.
Councillor Cameron.
Yes.
The
Councillor Cameron, those against? I declare the motion lost.
You can go to the foreshadow motion.
Yes, Councillor Jones, your foreshadow motion. Report on the implications of
Did you get it down? Yeah, so council requests a report prior to budget on the implications of a full-time grants officer position, and just take it as noted.
I'll second that.
Seconded, councillor Reid. Beat you to the punch again, councillor Reid.
Very quick.
Okay, do we need any discussion?
Couldn't get in.
Speakers for, briefly?
Just briefly, I just want to acknowledge that
Sorry,
Councillor
close the
Canberra has brought this to our attention. I think it was something that a lot of us felt really strongly about during the election period, of not only supporting staff, but also the element of supporting our community, because as Councillor Possum pointed out, when community groups can get 100% of the grant and we've only got the position of 50-50, I love keeping our reserves there for when we need them. So if anything can assist the community, do what they do well. We're always covered in red tape. Private enterprises and community associations have the power to get things across the line and get things at a cheaper mates rates than we ever could, and work in a sphere that really makes these grants get bang for the community's buck. So anything that we can do to assist our community, which I think a full-time grants position will do, is okay by me, and I'd like to just get confirmation that that's how best we can spend our money. It could turn around and our executives say, actually what you need is strategic planning so that we can leverage the grants that we do go for and get better success of them. And either way, that's the result that I think Councillor Cameron is actually calling for in his previous motion.
Okay, I don't think we need any further discussion, do we? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Those against? Okay. Okay.
Maybe.
We'll see.
9-1.
Just the minutes of the CubeLink Community Consultant Group from October and November of last year.
It's a recommendation. Been noted. Councillor Turner, Councillor Pertham, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Minutes of the Bango Wind Farm Consultative Committee. Again, they've been noted. Councillor Turner, Councillor Abbey, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Minutes of the Local Rescue Committee, Local Emergency Management Committee.
Go for 3 strikes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Turner, Councillor Potham, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. We now have to go back into,
You did a motion to move into closed session. And
Councillor
close-
Jones,
Cameron.
Councillor Cameron. The troublemaker.
Are you the camera?
We'll only just pick out.
I'll put the motion, all those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Okay.
So you just need to wait on until we can actually stop the streaming.
Yeah.